Okay, so we're back. We've already had 9 terms. I'm going to give you 7 more. Term number 10, as we work towards our 20 for the quiz, pitch. Pitch is the relative position, high or low, of a musical sound. And by that I mean, okay, what's the difference between these two sounds? Bump, bump. Excellent, right. One of them was higher than the other one. Bump. The word we usually use for those kinds of sounds is high. The word we usually use for these kind, bump, 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 is low. Now, we don't need to worry about the physics of that. Maybe some other time I can get into the physics of how all of that works. But our ears and brains process those sounds as being different, and we call those bump pitches high, and we call the other ones bump low. Pitch, the relative position, high or low, of a musical sound. Note. This is a word that's really similar, and it's really difficult to not confuse them. Conversationally, you totally won't get in trouble if you confuse these two words. I'll do it myself sometimes. You will lose points in the quiz, however. So remember this, that a note is a musical sound having a specific pitch or duration. I should say and or duration. Okay, so let me do that again. A note is a musical sound having a specific pitch and or duration. Now, by saying and or duration, what I'm talking about is that a note could exist with one of these things on the piano or on any other instrument. A note could be sung. But a note could also exist in a non-pitched sort of way. For instance, a drummer can play a drum roll, sort of like that, and the duration of that sound has been specified, but the pitch hasn't. You're just hitting a drum. So note is that generic term that is for a musical sound having a specific pitch and or duration. A note has a counterpart. Note, as I said, was a musical sound. A rest is a prescribed silence, usually of a specified duration. And if you think back to when I was explaining beat and explaining measure, I was doing something like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and so on. And you could feel that the beat was continuing even though I wasn't making a sound. What I was creating there was 3 notes, 1 note for each of the first 3 beats in that measure, 1, 2, 3, and a rest on beat 4, a silence of a prescribed duration. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So there's how rests work. Rests are really important. They can serve to create tension and all kinds of cool stuff. They can separate one musical idea from another. Rest, prescribed silence, usually of a specified duration. Okay, a couple of related words coming up here. And the first one is melody. A melody is a series of notes arranged in order. Another word for that is the tune. The melody or tune is the series of notes arranged in order. And by that, I'm going to pull out my awesome piano chops and show you what I mean. Okay, now I can play some notes, and what will I do? I'll play this. That's a bunch of notes all at once. But if I were to arrange them in a specific order and give them particular lengths, I could turn that clump of notes into a melody. It was the same notes. By arranging them in a specific order and giving them particular durations, I created a melody. I created a tune, Star Spangled Banner. A melody, the series of notes arranged in order, aka the tune. Now, you'll remember the first thing I did was this. Played them all at once. By doing that, I created harmony. Harmony is pitches sounding together simultaneously. In Western music, and especially in European music, musicians spent enormous amounts of time over an extended period, centuries and centuries and centuries, thinking about harmony, about which pitches work well together and how they should all relate to one another. Other forms of music have assigned more or less. Actually, nobody assigns more importance to harmony than European classical music does. But lots of other cultures have assigned a certain amount less attention to harmony. But anyway, harmony is the counterpart to melody, and most of the time, in most pieces, both things are going along at once. You will hear some notes sounding simultaneously, creating a harmony, while in front of that, or over top of that, you'll hear a melody. The two things usually interact, and in the West, they interact usually according to prescribed rules. And we'll get into more of that on down the line, but for our purposes now, and for the purpose of the quiz, you need to know that harmony is pitches sounding together simultaneously. When we talk about harmony, we will usually talk about chords, because a chord is the basic unit of harmony. In much the same way that when you're talking about money, you usually talk about dollars, because a dollar is the basic unit of money in the United States. So chord, the basic unit of harmony. It's essentially any group of pitches sounding together. So you can take lots of notes, and that can be a chord, or you can just have a couple of them, and that can be a chord. 2 pitches sounding simultaneously, 10 pitches sounding simultaneously. As long as you've got more than one going at once, you're creating a chord, the basic unit of harmony. The most common type of chord, and one that in Europe and therefore in America became really important to songwriters and composers, was the triad. A triad is a common type of chord having 3 different pitches. And over the centuries, European composers in particular worked out rules for how you select which pitches to include in your triad. We're not going to worry about all the specifics of that, but know that when we say a C major chord, for instance, or say a D minor chord, in both cases, we're creating a triad, that common type of chord having 3 different pitches. Okay there, almost done. See you soon.